Hello everyone and welcome to The No Show. I'll be your host Nathan Orenstein, and today I want to talk about the best movies of 2023 so far. We're about halfway through the year, so I thought it'd be fun to highlight the movies that I've considered great over the course of this year. In other words, these are movies I would have given an 8 out of 10 or better to if I had done a formal review for them. Of the 42 new movies I've seen this year, I'll be talking about 13 of them today. And I'll also let you know where you can watch each of these as of the date of recording. With all that out of the way, let's get into the list. Kicking things off with easily the most divisive film on this list, we have Skinamarink, directed by Kyle Edward Ball. This is an experimental horror film about two young boys that are trapped alone in their home, but all the windows and doors have disappeared. It's tough to describe Skinamarink. It's incredibly minimal, featuring nothing but still frames, and many of those are simply of hallways, ceilings, and floors. There's practically no dialogue or even much of a story, but I was one of the people who absolutely fell in love with it, really letting the atmosphere suck me in and transport me to this nightmare home. I can't really even recommend this one, to be honest, as I'm sure it comes off as completely boring if you're not into it, but I thought it was great and therefore had to include it. Check it out on Shudder if you're interested. I promise the rest of the movies on this list will be more normal. Next we have Knock at the Cabin, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Based on the novel The Cabin at the End of the World, Knock at the Cabin is about a family of three who are held hostage by four doomsayers, who tell them they have to sacrifice one of themselves in order to stop the apocalypse. I won't go too into this one since I have a review up on the channel, but I basically saw this as a massive return to form for Shyamalan, and I would easily place it among his best. It's tense, filled with great performances, and has you second-guessing everything as the story progresses. It's a great thriller that you can watch on Peacock. Next is Creed 3, directed by Michael B. Jordan. This is the continuation of the Creed series, where Adonis is forced to deal with and eventually fight a friend from his past that he wronged. Again, I have a review of this one, so I'll keep it short, but this is a fantastic directorial debut from Michael B. Jordan, who brings a real style and energy to this franchise. It feels very Hollywood, but in a good way, and it spices up a formula that could have gotten stale from all the previous Rocky and Creed movies. Creed 3 is available to stream on Prime Video. Next is John Wick Chapter 4, directed by Chad Stahelski. If you're into action movies at all, you have to watch John Wick Chapter 4. I will note that this is definitely a direct sequel, so there's a good chance you might get lost if you haven't seen the previous entries, but it's worth going through the entire series, honestly. Chapter 3 is easily the best of the bunch in my opinion, though. Clocking in at just under 3 hours, this thing flies by. The action set pieces are absolutely incredible, and there are some scenes here that I legitimately don't understand how they were shot. I also think this is the most compelling film story-wise in the series too, with John Wick getting some much-needed development along with his relationships with the other characters. But ultimately, Chapter 4 is a sprawling action spectacle that delivers in basically every way imaginable. It's available to rent wherever you rent movies. Next we've got Rye Lane, directed by Rain Allen Miller, which is probably the furthest thing from John Wick Chapter 4 imaginable. It's a breezy, 82-minute rom-com that takes place basically in a single day. Two recently single 20-somethings in London meet and bond over activities they do to get back at their exes. It's really light and fun, but packs enough of an emotional punch to really bring things home. It also has a pretty distinct visual style with its use of wide angles that you might like, but for me it didn't really add much. Regardless, there's no excuse to miss such a short and sweet movie, and you can watch it exclusively on Hulu. Up next is Air, directed by Ben Affleck. Air is about Nike and their quest to sign Michael Jordan to a shoe deal, now obviously known as Air Jordans. These corporate underdog stories are nothing new, and Air doesn't really add anything new to the formula either. But Air really does feel like it's perfected that formula of what makes these movies so enjoyable. It's got a great flow to it, and Air goes down smoother than probably any other movie on this list. Great cast, great soundtrack, great nostalgia factor, and great story. Like I said, Air doesn't bring anything new to the table, but it really does nail down the formula for these types of films. It's one of those films I feel like most people will enjoy, and you can check it out on Prime Video. Next is something much less accessible, and that is Beau is Afraid, directed by Ari Aster. It's a 3-hour-long paranoia-fueled journey through the blended delusions and reality that Joaquin Phoenix's Beau experiences. It's all over the place narrative-wise, leaving you to pick up the pieces of what is real and what's in Beau's head, and I think that Ari Aster handles this in a way that doesn't feel frustrating at all. It also left me with a huge knot in my stomach, and I really tend to enjoy films that can elicit such a strong physical reaction in me. This is far from a film for everyone, but I don't think there's much else like it out there, and I highly recommend it. It's available to rent wherever you rent movies. Up next is easily the best horror film of the year, Evil Dead Rise, directed by Lee Cronin. Hot take alert, I think that this is the best Evil Dead movie. It sees 3 kids and their aunt trapped in their apartment while their possessed mother tries to kill them. Alyssa Sutherland is exceptional as the possessed mom, perfectly encapsulating that horror-comedy blend that Evil Dead is known for. But really, this whole film rides that line perfectly. I wasn't scared by Evil Dead Rise, but I had a stupid grin on my face the entire runtime. This was easily the best time I've had in theaters all year. And as usual with these movies, the gore was incredible. You can check out Evil Dead Rise on HBO Max. Next is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, directed by Kelly Fremont Craig and based on the novel by Judy Blume. This is the story of Margaret, who's an 11-year-old girl that just moved to a new state and is trying to fit in at school, figure out what religion she is, go through puberty, figure out how to talk to boys, and all that 11-year-old girl stuff. If you couldn't tell, this probably is aimed more at girls, but as a guy, I really appreciated it too. It's a great coming-of-age story that manages to stay light and entertaining, but also tackles some of the more unappealing aspects of growing up and finding yourself that a lot of movies stay away from. It might bite off more than it can chew at times, but it's a great watch despite the minor flaws it has. It's available to rent wherever you rent movies. After that lesser-known gem, we have one of the biggest blockbusters of the year, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, directed by James Gunn. You've heard me rant about Marvel before, but I'll give them their flowers when they deserve it. And Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is the best Marvel movie since Avengers Endgame. It's the same action-comedy combo of the first 2 Guardians movies, but this one really amps up the emotion factor by diving into Rocket Raccoon's tragic backstory. It still features some of Marvel's typical pitfalls, and it does run too long, but it's also incredibly entertaining and hits hard when it needs to. It felt good to be this excited about an MCU movie again. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is still in theaters, but it probably won't be much longer, so catch it soon. Next up is Reality, directed by Tina Satter. Reality is unlike anything I've ever seen. Its dialogue is taken straight from the FBI interrogation transcript of American whistleblower Reality Winner. For that reason, it feels much different than most movies, because this is organic, nervous dialogue between a woman accused of leaking classified information and the 2 FBI agents that have come to interrogate her about it. Sydney Sweeney is fantastic as Reality here, and this is the first chance for her to really spread her wings as a dramatic lead. I also really loved how Tina Satter directed this, opting for a more minimal approach that also feels claustrophobic and threatening in its cinematography. This won't be for everyone due to its political nature and almost entire reliance on dialogue, but I think it's a hidden gem that many people likely missed. You can check it out on HBO Max. Next is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, directed by Joaquim Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. This is, without a doubt, the most acclaimed mainstream film of the year, and I really can't argue with that. In my opinion, it doesn't quite reach the highs as the first Spider-Verse film, but it's fantastic nonetheless. It features a bigger story, more characters, higher stakes, and even bigger swings with the animation that make this a must-watch. I don't have much to add. It's one of the most impressive animated films ever, and one that demands to be watched at the theater where it is still showing. And last, but certainly not least, is Past Lives, directed by Celine Song. Past Lives is about a woman who immigrated to America as a child, and a man who had a crush on her when she lived in Korea. They reconnect as adults, first online and then in person, and that makes them consider their relationship and their lives as a whole. Past Lives is the only film on this list that I would describe as beautiful, and it is very deserving of that description. Its perfect editing and gorgeous score allow the film to really just float along, but its excellent writing and performances are really at the core here. It's the type of movie that kind of puts life in general into perspective, but not at all in a way that feels pretentious. And honestly, I really don't have a bad thing to say about it. It's still showing in theaters, but might not be there much longer, so give it a try ASAP. And that completes the list. I'd love to hear your favorite movies of 2023 so far down in the comments below, and feel free to subscribe if you're new. I've been Nathan Orenstein with The No Show. Thanks for watching.